We'll call the meeting to order, 7:03, March 12th. This is the Wenham Finance and Advisory Committee. Present is Finn Sprague, see Jared Ward, Robert Popodik, and then who else do we have? We've got one member of the public here as well.
Dano's here.
And Dano, you're here too. Okay, sorry. Great. And I think we're good to go. So fairly small agenda here. We've got the public comment. We've got the financial articles where we're going to talk about the warrant book. We've got a meeting minutes from, I think, January 29th to approve, and then open items. We can start with public comment. I see one member of the public here. Lizzie, do you have a particular topic that you see on the agenda that we can cover later, or do you have any anything for the group here generally? All right. I think I saw Lizzie go off of mute and then back on again, so I'm not hearing anything. So I think we can move on to the next topic. Does anybody have any objection to taking this out of order and approving the January 29th meeting minutes first?
And Finn, I believe we have January 8th and 23rd as well.
Okay. All right. I don't know that I have those prepared up on the screen here. So I've got the 29th.
I sent those over on last night about 7:30.
Okay, let's grab these then. All right, we got this one, January 8th. All right, so folks, we got these, as Jeff said, late last night, so I'm not sure if everybody's had a chance to read over them. But we'll just take a brief moment to look over the January 8th one. I'm going to put it up on the screen here for folks that might want to read. You guys can see the screen, right?
Yep.
All right, great. I'll give another minute for folks to read through this to see if they have any objections to the January 8th meeting minutes.
I'm okay with the minutes.
Okay. Now then we'll take a motion to approve the January 8th meeting minutes as sent by Jeff. Yes,
So
last
moved.
night.
Second.
Looking for a second. All right, Bob's got a second. All right, any discussion? Not hearing any, we'll move to a vote. So Finn votes aye.
Jared, aye.
Bob, aye.
Dano, do you have a vote?
Dano, aye. Sorry, muted.
Dano, all right, so we got 4 out of the 4 present to approve that. Take a look at the January 23rd meeting. It looks like everyone was present. The next page here. I'm ready to move to a vote. Read through.
So moved to approve the minutes.
Aye. Jared, aye. Or seconded and aye.
Aye,
All right,
Bob.
Finn, aye.
Dano, aye.
All right, great. And then we'll take a look at the 29th. So okay, we had everybody here at present for this one as well.
I didn't check it, but on the 8th is the correction that I sent.
Oh, yeah, I
Uh,
did make the correction, Bob.
Okay.
All right, I read through this earlier today. You guys ready to move to a vote?
Yes, aye, Jared.
All right, someone's got to make a motion first,
I'll
so
make a
I'll make that.
motion.
I move that we vote on the minutes.
Okay, second,
Sec.
All right, Bob's got a second, so we'll move to a vote. Finn votes aye.
Jared, aye.
Bye-bye.
Dano, aye.
All right, so we've got 4 aye votes there. All right, so that covers through the relatively easy list here. All right, so the next item we have on here is taking a look at the annual town meeting warrant. Right, so um, just to get everybody up to speed here, so the warrant book is going to go out, right, and it'll go to all the different folks in the town. They'll get a physical copy, and then there will be a review of it during the annual town meeting. There is a second document that the town moderator and the town puts together, but that's more of a script for us to be reading out loud during the meeting. And part of that is going to be specific language introducing each one of the motions, right? Um, really, especially the financial ones. Everybody in the whether it's the select board or the finance committee kind of has a role to play and a speaking role to play in the um, annual meeting. So what I asked Jeff to do was to help us kind of identify, where that's the speaking roles were, so that we could get kind of we could parse out, which one of these motions we're all going to kind of have an opportunity to present to the town, and perhaps maybe get a little practice in on pronunciation of some of the more high syllable words that are in some of um, these specific motions. I remember stumbling over 1 or 2 words last year. So I don't know, Jeff, if you've got some more specific guidance in that.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I was just going through last year as a reference, and in Wenham, we have the finance committee reads quite a few articles that I think in other towns might be read. For instance, the cemetery related articles would usually be read by the cemetery board. And that would be on page 39 of the warrant if you're going through that, Finn. Or no, not 39. It's further. It's actually articles. Where are we? Articles 10, 9, and 10. Typically it would be the cemetery that would read those, but here in Wenham we seem to have the finance committee read those. And in this case, articles 8, 9, and 10 are part of what we call a consent agreement agenda, which one person reads all 3 articles and they get voted on as one. And last year I noticed that was Scott who read the consent agenda. So as I was going through the list, the first one, there's an item in there for increasing the exemption for veterans. That might actually be an article that you folks read. I'm going to have to get some clarification on that from, so it'd be Article 2, no, it is Article 3, there you go. I'll get some clarification from that from Steve, but certainly Articles 4, 5, 6, 7, the consent agenda of 8 through 10. Article 11 is collective bargaining. 12 is the adoption of the prudent investor language. That would all be us. 13, creating a revolving fund. That would be us, I think. 14, 15, 16, 17 would be us. And I think that would be the end of the finance committee portion.
Is there a table of contents in here that would kind of show all these topics in one place?
There's not. I'm actually typing one up right now that I might just, it's a quick bullet point I'm typing up that I might just circulate to all of you to walk through it. I was typing it up just so I could start putting maybe some names next to the articles. But those would be the ones. I don't think any other articles would actually fall under the finance committee. I think at that point we switch over to more planning board type of articles.
So I'm trying to remember the way the public acted at the last major vote, which was what was it? The sport the
Fields,
right? And when they put that at the beginning of the agenda and put the vote at the beginning of the agenda, we lost something like 25 or 50% of the people in the meeting hall afterwards. And I think there's like a quorum requirements. I don't know if it's beginning at the end or the entire time.
It can be called at any time. There needs to be a quorum to start the meeting. But I believe that under the rules, someone can call a quorum count at any time, which could stop the meeting at some point if they were to call that towards the end and there were not enough folks present.
So I'm wondering where did we place the Cutler?
So the Cutler is Article 1. It's the first one in there. But there is also a citizens petition article, which I believe is the final article of the night, which would probably be in the towards page like 50 maybe. It's on page 46. It's Article 24. I don't think it happened much last year, which was my first meeting here. Articles can be requested to move around, so I don't know if folks may request moving the citizens petition article up. It sort of goes hand in hand with the Article 1 for the Cutler School. But your synopsis is pretty similar in most towns. The big ticket articles, when they're up in the front, you see a significant drop off as soon as that article is done.
Okay, so what I'd like to do, Jeff, is is have that kind of table of contents, those notes that you have there, and start kind of allocating those out so that the ones that either someone has a passion for or is just kind of if we just rotate it, automatically. Happy to do that as well, just to get people, get the other members of the committee here to kind of recognize what the role is going to be at the meeting.
In question, are we taking corrections to the warrant at this point before we allocate?
It's my understanding that the warrant has been printed, right? I think the deadline was middle of last week to make corrections to the language in the deck or in the warrant book. Is that right, Jeff?
Yeah, it did go to the printer, but there is a distinction there. The warrant is not, it's gone out, but it's not actually final because the Board of Selectmen, or Select Board, excuse me, does not vote to finalize the warrant until their meeting on the 18th, I believe it is. So it's possible that this could change. But in terms of making changes before it goes out in a mailer, that has gone.
Well, there's an error on Article 6 in the vote from the FinCom at the last meeting.
Stabilization fund.
No, I write the wrong number down. It's the capital budget.
So that's Article 5, and it actually looks a little strange. Because if you'll recall, the Finance Committee, when they met as a group, probably the last meeting we had in February, all 5 of you were present, I believe, and you voted 5-0 in favor of the entire capital other than the historic district study. And then we met with the select board on the 4th, and we had another vote. And we did not, I think actually we voted 2-2.
It was 2-2-1.
2-2-1.
Yes. I pulled my notes up from the meeting because the
Well, there was only
0-5 just didn't make any sense.
Well, we only had 4 people at the meeting with the select boards, and that vote was 2-2. And so the way, I could go back and forth on this, but the way Steve sort of recorded this was to footnote it and say, and I actually reordered the capital to make it so that the historic study was last, so that we could say, the select board voted 4-1 to approve all items 1 through 23. But the FinCom, voted essentially 5-0 against supporting everything. They supported 1 through 22, 5-0, but they did not support the entire list above 5. So he showed it as a 0-5 vote for what was listed above in the warrant, and then in the footnote below said the FinCom did approve numbers 1 through 22 in a 5-0 vote. It's a weird presentation. So I wonder how that's going to play out at town meeting, because it looks like if you read it, it looks originally like the FinCom's not in favor of any of the capital.
So Bob, how did you read this?
Well, the vote that I wrote down from our meeting was 2-2, and it failed. Now, I thought there was an abstention in there. A 2-2-1 is what I wrote down, and the vote failed on that basis.
So
Oh,
Jeff,
I
can you
see.
help
So,
me
yeah.
understand? Like, if you don't have someone present, is that counted as an abstention or is counted as a not present?
I would sort of say it's a no. I would say we took a 2-2 vote that day. Abstention would be, I would view that more that we're voting on this, and Dano were to say, my wife's painting company might apply for that exterior painting job, so I'm going to abstain from this vote. But if you're present and don't vote, that's an abstention. If you're not there, I wouldn't view that as a 2-2-1 vote. I would just view it as 2-2. Because if you
that's fine. That was my concern, was having 0-5 show up here.
Yeah, and I think it's just the inverse. If we voted 5-0 in favor of everything, if we took out the historic commission, but when you put it back in, we weren't in favor of the list as it's shown above. And it also gets a little more complicated because then when we write, sort of the narrative and say, what we want to put into stabilization, we didn't support the 50,000 for the historic, commission, but now it's possible that, it's on the warrant and it could get voted on. So we had to assume it could be free cash that was used. So it's going to limit how much free cash is available in the next article, even though we didn't support it.
All right. And I'm looking for any other questions or comments about specific language of the warrant. All right, not hearing any. Jeff, is there any way that you could create that list? and we
I
could just,
just type in the last few things right now, and then I can,
Mhm.
I can move it over to the screen here so we can see it.
so if I recall last year, the script itself showed up about a week ahead of the actual town meeting. So that's, I think the timing that folks can expect to get the specific language that they'd be asked to speak. I haven't asked the committee members, is anybody have a problem with speaking publicly at the meeting? Are everybody willing to?
This is the town meeting?
Mm-hmm.
No, but I just had a question. Are we supposed to be at the warrant hearing as well on the 31st?
Yes, so the warrant hearing on the 31st is a joint meeting with the select board and the FinCom. And actually the script that Finn is talking about, it's almost like a dress rehearsal. We go through from opening statements to every article on the town meeting warrant and read through the way it's going to play out at town meeting. And so the FinCom and the select board are there, but also, planning board members, anybody else who ends up reading some of these articles will be part of that as well.
What time? It doesn't say here what time the meeting is on the 31st.
I believe it's 7 o'clock is typically the time.
Okay.
All right, and so this is the list, and technically we might have that Article 3 as well. So so typically the chair reads Article 4, the operating budget. That's the only one that's sort of set in stone. The rest of them are, sort of up for grabs. I think we could look at these a little bit and, try to pick out what, the capital is likely to be one that there's quite a few quite a few items on it. So that one could, be some debate, and the person, and I should point out that, who for those who aren't familiar with it, if you're the person reading the motion, you are the first person to answer questions. That the script lays out who reads the motion, what the motion says, and then lays out who would answer questions. So it might, if Bob were to read the capital article, he would be tasked with being able to answer a question about anything on the capital list. Then they might list me as the backup. And so, as Bob is trying to answer questions, he can defer to me and say, I'd like to ask the finance director to, he's got a bit more information on, the police cruiser or whatever it might be. So you wouldn't want to give someone, 3 or 4 ones that you feel like, well, geez, there could be a lot of questions on those. So, when I look at this list, the Article 16, the water capital, to move money from their reserve fund into, or their fund balance into the PFAS study and engineering for 500,000. It's a big dollar amount, so that could likely get some questions. I don't think you get a lot of questions about the water truck purchase or the 35,000 to water capital reserves. That's, kind of standard every year. The prudent investor, I guess, could get some questions. Folks might just ask sort of what's going on with that and why we need it, or whatever, which, we'll be able to answer those questions as well. I'm trying to, stabilization is probably, you could get some questions there. I mean, people could say, how did you decide to, get down to 1% of operating budget, or why didn't you do, put more into OPEB or do something else. Capital will definitely be questions. Short-term debt, I think, should be fairly self-explanatory to folks that we're just trying to pay it down and save on some interest, and pull it out of the operating budget for FY26. Collective bargaining, I think this one, people might have some questions on that. So yeah, I think I might just say, don't, I wouldn't give the same person all the ones highlighted in red. This will be Finn for sure. But yeah, other than that, they're fairly straightforward. I mean, if there's ones that people are more passionate about, or they feel like they know more about a particular subject that they'd prefer to be on that one to talk about it if needed. That's certainly worth considering as well.
All right, so I guess what I'm asking the committee members here to take a look at this list and see if there's any that they'd really prefer. I'm not going to make any comments about myself since I'm going to be spending a lot of time in Article 4. I'll let everybody else pick first.
And this is the type of thing, Finn, I don't know that we have to reach a consensus on this, tonight. It could be the kind of thing that we could have a little bit of dialogue. This isn't a vote type thing, I wouldn't view. So, if folks took a few days to think about it and, wanted to get back and say, geez, I wouldn't mind doing, Articles 6, 8, or 6, 12, and 13 or something like that. I think we can kind of offline sort of organize that. David's not here as well, so it might be worth, maybe I can take this list, send it out to the whole group, which would include David, and sort of ask everybody, I mean, what are we looking at? We've got 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, so there's about 15. So, that's 3 apiece, but where Finn does the operating, that, almost is like, 3 or 4 articles in one. But yeah, if we kind of said everybody kind of pick, 2 or 3, and we can just kind of pull it together, and maybe, people can let us know, sort of give us a ranking. Like, my top choice would be, this article. My second choice would be this article. My third choice would be this article. And then I can try to compile them into a list and circulate it to the group, and just get, everybody's thoughts on that. And then I can let Steve know, and he can begin, putting names into the script.
Which makes
Yeah,
sense.
It's Jared. I'm happy to be assigned at random, whatever if you need to assign people to articles.
Okay.
Because recognizing that Finn is going to be doing the heavy lifting with, number 4. So, feel free to just, assign me to whatever articles, you want, and I'll bone up on them if I need to.
Okay. Fair enough.
Would it make sense to have each one of us take one of the red items, including Finn on the 4?
Yeah, 4 is definitely a red. Good point.
Yeah, so I mean that, and then have people then pick up secondary items.
Yeah, trying to think of what other.
Well, on 11 collective bargaining, I mean, none of us sit on the negotiating committees, so.
Yeah, I don't know for sure that you will be required to read that. I'm just thinking you may, because it sort of seems like anything that has any financial ramifications, they tend to assign to a FinCom person. But
I think I would suggest that you find somebody who's actually, involved in the negotiations, because we'd look kind of dumb if we just said can't add much because we're not on the, we don't negotiate the contracts.
right.
I mean, I would just
Yeah,
chime
and
in
it's
at the same
interesting,
time. If we're reading it, it's a script. We just read it, and I know for me, I'm going to be quick to defer to Jeff on any question on whatever I'm reading. So I'm not going to feel bad about that.
Yeah, and
I don't
would
think we
say,
have to be super expert on the topic necessarily. We just got to be able to read the script.
And on collective bargaining, Jared, you know, I get your point in terms of the level of knowledge of the negotiations. It's really an odd administrative requirement for the first year of a union contract that we just have to vote to accept the contract that's already in the budget we approved at Article 4. But for whatever reason, we have to just approve it. So to Dano's point, as you read it, you know, you could then immediately say, you know, I can defer to Jeff, or, you know, defer to Steve, who, you know, could answer more questions about the bargaining itself. You know, and, you know, it's interesting because, you know, Steve or I might be the most appropriate person to read it if you were coming at it from the way you're presenting it, but, you know, neither of us is a resident, so it's not, that's not something we can do here. But yeah, I'll keep that in mind. I'll ask Steve a little bit about that, like how I think his first year here was a collective bargaining year, so he's maybe been through this in Wenham one time before, and he can give me some info on what he thinks, you know, that article will require, or how much feedback it will really even get.
Well, just the last thing on that, I my friend Angus West, who is a very knowledgeable citizen, you know, he's always asking me, well, did the town push all the costs into the out years on the collective bargaining agreements so that we didn't have an override this year? And you know, there
We
could
actually
be those
pulled
kind
more
of
into this
questions.
year. We actually took the opposite approach and pulled a little bit more into the first year.
Okay.
But yeah, you know, I mean, I can see someone, you know, thinking that way, but you know, there were a number of different reasons for approaching it that way. But yeah, I would say more often than not, they were a little bit more front end loaded than not. And yeah, and so like again, to Dano's point, you know, you could read the article if it were you, and then when that question were to come from the audience, you know, you could immediately say, well, I'm gonna defer to Steve Poulos on that, or to Jeff, and we can walk through it.
Okay.
All right. 1, 2, 3, 4.
So I'm happy to take the same position I think that Jared had, right? So if you wanted to assign them out to me, you know, with given enough time to bone up on a little bit, but recognizing also that most of the questions I'm going to be diverting to someone specific. So that is, you know, knowing who to divert to is kind of part of my process in my script. Who am I going to divert? You know, if I'm short-term debt, you know, who am I, you know, diverting to if I get a specific question.
Gotcha. I do always like to ask, are there veterans on the committee who are, you know, feel, you know, compassionate about, you know, reading the Article 3 about providing extra exemptions to veterans?
I qualify as a veteran, but I don't have any particular compulsion.
Okay.
Similar sentiment.
Okay. All right. Well, taking Bob's advice, I'll have to figure out one more I'll consider a red, and assign everybody to one of those. And then it sounds like maybe most folks are okay with just, you know, sort of divvying the rest of them up, you know, in any way we think makes sense.
Sure. Okay, and we
Okay.
got some time. We got one more member that you can pose the question to over email.
Yeah, I
See
suppose
who
that's the real question: is what do we want to stick David with?
The hardest
Okay.
one on there besides
Yeah.
OPEX.
Yeah, in a break from precedent, he'll read the operating budget, Finn.
It's nothing quite like standing up in front of people and saying numbers for 15 minutes straight. So
Yeah, that is a good one. Good Lord.
all right. Okay. Any other discussion on this topic? All right, and then I think we've got some actions we move forward. So if I look at the agenda, we don't have anything specific mentioned here. So I have something to discuss in addition, but I don't know if anybody else has any other topics they'd like to put on the list here.
It's Jared. I just had one brief information item. I know that, you know, we discussed at the last, I think it was the last meeting, you know, we were all shocked, at least about the rise in the healthcare cost. And I think we agreed that we were going to seek at least to know what the options were as a matter of, fiduciary prudence to given the shocking number that came out. I subsequently read, there was a very good article in the Globe, and there were a couple of other things that I read. And it really is what I've learned is it's really amazing. Almost 90% of this rate increase apparently is due to these weight loss drugs that people are sticking themselves with. It's just unbelievable. Blue Cross said they're paying $400 million incremental. So in other words, I sort of got an explanation, and I sort of understand. It's kind of horrifying, but anyway, I just wanted to pass that along.
And we've actually heard the same internally in talking to the folks at Maya, Jared, that that is a really huge driver of these numbers. But I will tell you, because I think we didn't actually manage to do it at the meeting on the 4th, but we were going to, let the select board know that you had voted to ask them to pursue, other options. And I have talked to Steve about that. And one of the things he has been doing with a number of other town administrators that are on sort of an email chain or a text chain or something that are in the same boat with Maya that we are, is trying to exert some pressure on Maya to find a way to lower these costs for us. But Steve and I talked the other day about, once we have the warrant and all the town meeting stuff sort of buttoned up here, is to start, look into the GIC and see what our options are there, and start looking at what our options are in terms of changing carriers, or in terms of changing plan structure, and looking at how you share costs with employees. Just all of our options that are going to have to become something that's going to be addressed. Him and I have talked about it, sooner rather than later, because it's just becoming a harder part of our budget to manage. And we've been relatively fortunate in recent years, and I say that, half tongue in cheek, because, we're still getting, 7, 8, 9% increases in a lot of years, but we've never seen anything like this. And so this is now that this is, a possibility, it changes how we look at things, because we obviously can't absorb, we barely can absorb a 20%, close to 20% increase in 1 year, but we can't be looking at this being our new norm. So, those sort of conversations have started with other TAs and trying to exert pressure with Maya. And then, Steve and I will start to look at how, what are our options, talk to legal and figure out what we can and can't do, and then figure out how to look at what those options are. And either, we find a better way to go, or maybe that helps us put a little more pressure on Maya. But it's interesting that you saw something very similar to what we were hearing on that front on the Ozempic drugs.
That was all I had.
Can I bring up a chart I sent to Jeff, and he dressed it up just as information for the committee, because I think it reinforces the idea that as median household income goes up, towns spend more on education. And so I added 5 towns that are larger than us with high MHIs. And I think the conclusion is the one that Jeff wrote back to me, that people with higher incomes in towns spend more on education because they value it more. And we're right on the line. So that it's not that we shouldn't be looking for ways to save money. It's just that this seems to be a characteristic of towns with characteristics like Wenham.
And Bob, I wanted to ask you, because Wenham ends up right on the line in a number of these that you've done. And is that just happenstance? I mean, we've been off the line on a couple, but I find it interesting. We're right on the line in probably 4 or 5 of these.
No, that there's nothing that I'm doing to force that. That just happens when the regression solves the equation.
Interesting.
And I don't know anything in terms of our town behavior that would put us there either. It's I found it interesting that our friends in West Newbury continue to be an outlier, being lower from the line. Basically, you know, and this is a little loaded because I selected high MHA towns to add. I could have added some more low MH ones, but the R squared is even tighter than it was before I added the 5 high income groups. But I think it argues against the thought that we're too small with our regional school district and we need to be bigger, because it doesn't seem that these bigger towns actually spend any less. In fact, they spend more as their MHI goes up than we do. It may also tie into some of the comments that I had when I talked to Superintendent Tracy, and I shared with him the earlier data. And also, we started chatting about metrics for measuring school district performance. And he mentioned the problem of having trouble beating some of the same people that are on this list. So that may not really say anything about the quality of what's the education. It may just say something about the input into the education system, and therefore it's easier to, you know, get more kids going to college and get higher scores and all that because they start from a higher base. There may actually be school systems with in areas where people aren't as well educated, parents aren't, who are actually doing a better job moving people up, but you know, they don't compete when you look at sort of the go to college scores and other scores.
Remind me, this is based on median income or average income?
Median household income. Government statistic, it's
I
the
just I was just going to react to two things you said. One was that people who have more money value education more. I don't know if that's what you said or if that's what you meant to say or if that's what I misheard, but I'd say people who have more money
well,
have more
spend
money to spend on education.
Yeah.
People who have less money may value it the same, but just don't have the money to spend on it. So still
Agree with
true.
you.
Yeah. And then the household income conclusion that we're not too small. Yeah, we're not too small for the median. We're maybe too small for the bottom quartile. And taxes may be too high for the bottom quartile, but we're not too small for the median household.
Yeah, I mean, I think the issue is that, you know, Wenham, population wise, size wise, is really more down here with these folks, but they're more up here with these, you know, we put, even though we're population wise, we're down here, our income pulls us closer to the top, and we, you know, we're obviously moving higher up. We're acting more like the larger wealthy towns up top than we are like the towns that are more like us population wise. I was thinking Bob meant the, you know, just in general that Hamilton Wenham as a school district is, you could probably be bigger. Yeah, or we're even as two towns we're too small, we should be part of a bigger program. I was thinking that's more of what you were talking about, Bob.
Well, you know, the populations of the people that added 13,009, 11,008, 10,000, 18,009, 34.4, 18.5. So the people that got added are bigger than us combined with Hamilton.
So Bob, I noticed that Hamilton isn't on here. I see, I suppose Manchester by the Sea, I've always thought kind of had a similar MHI. There is Hamilton not on here because it's not comparable, or like the MHI is materially different from Wenham?
The MHI is different. It's around 120,000, which is why when you do the school district comparison, it blends it. You blend it at 140. But Hamilton isn't on here because it wasn't on our list of comparables originally. I'd be happy to get the data for Hamilton to add it.
Yeah, we could throw it in. I mean, they are much bigger than us. They're outside the population set, but they probably should be on there. You know, and I don't know why I might have pulled them off early on, but they probably should be in here so we could rework that. Especially where like we have Essex, Manchester, and Essex that are in a district together. We maybe could also look at Bob, the Masco towns, Topsfield, Middleton, Boxford, whether they should be on here. They're regionally close, and they're also, I would think a few of them are, at least two of them are median household income is probably pretty similar too.
We can add them. You know, one of the
Yeah.
interesting things is what the cities and towns, particularly before I added the 5, because I don't know exactly what they're doing, but I looked up what the other towns are doing, and they're doing everything from a regional, farming out their students all to someplace else, doing PK to 5, 6, 7, 8. I mean, in terms of the method of addressing education, there's a real spectrum here in terms of the communities that are on the chart.
So that kind of goes into one of the topics that I wanted to. I've actually got 3. One of them is you know, the idea of, where Wenham can go to materially reduce its tax burden um on the residents, right? The as I read through the article in the newspaper about how that might happen, it looked particularly expensive for Wenham to try to pull out of the regional agreement and go its own way. And I think the consolidation seems to me to be the way that you would go and generate cost savings. And so it made more sense for to imagine, in that particular instance of combining the Hamilton Wenham School District with another neighboring district rather than having Wenham try to pull out, deal with all the financial ramifications, and then go into another one. But that really made the question of like, and that's why I asked, where's Hamilton on this? Is, you know, Hamilton and Wenham have already joined, on the school district, which is 60% of our spending, the library and the recreational leagues. Like it makes more sense to me to consider, you know, um, doing more consolidation with Hamilton in order to, generate tax savings for the town of Wenham. But I'm looking for whether or not that's a glib answer. I'm hearing all sorts of drama at Hamilton when it comes to the cost of getting water to the town coming forward, and all these other things that are coming down the pike for Hamilton. So, whether or not we really want to make a plan to combine our police or fire departments, and look for savings there. As I look for, after the town meeting and this late spring and summer, whether or not we have any appetite for doing an analysis on kind of strategic cost reductions.
Finn, just on that point, you mentioned Hamilton, there's some talk about the expenses for water. And I know, as you all know, we're looking at having to build a brand new water plant, which we've never had before, to handle the PFAS issue. Wenham, as I understand it, has a pretty robust supply of water, but needs to build a plant. And I think Hamilton is struggling with supply, but does have a plant. So I do wonder if water is an area that I mean, it's not the general fund budget, but it's obviously still a cost of running the 2 towns. If that might be an area that makes sense for some sort of synergy, basically because of the PFAS issue. I mean, if we're looking at having to build a plant, this is going to be really, really expensive. Maybe there's a way to combine that with the fact that Hamilton already has a plant, so maybe it's only some sort of renovation to their plant, and somehow we tap our water supply into that, and if that sort of is a good solution for both towns. And I could talk to Eric Mansfield about that as well.
All right. I guess I'm suggesting that we should consider carving out time as a committee to look into some first draft sort of analysis of major cost reductions in the June, July, August timeframe.
Yeah.
I would think that makes some good sense. I think we've started some of that. Jeff's been doing that. We, so I think, it makes sense to do it during a period when there isn't a lot of pressure to get things processed, approved, printed, and that kind of thing.
All right, so that was the first one. The second thing I have is I got an email from Eric Tracy about a open position on the school building committee. It's a non-voting role. And he just said that the position is held open for the a member of the Wenham FinCom. We had Scott Schonenberger attending it before he dropped out this past year. So I was just wondering if there were any particular folks who were interested in that, that non-voting role.
Finn, do you know what the purpose is? Because I was on the building committee for the library, 20 plus years ago, more like 25 years ago. But I looked at, what's the expectation of what the representative does, contributes to the committee, and what does the expectation is it just reporting back to FinCom?
I'm not sure. I see in the upper right-hand corner of your screen here, Jeff, you've got school building committee. It might have, does it have, if you click on that link, does it give a calendar of when they're supposed to meet?
They just met on the 24th. I don't know. Let me see if I can. They don't have a March meeting scheduled yet, but I did take a look at. Yeah. So I mean, just as a pull this up, here's just an agenda that from their last meeting. I mean, I think you have a voice on the committee. Certainly, you're participating in the discussions. You'd be tasked with bringing the information back to the finance committee to keep them apprised of what's going on with the building committee. It is interesting that you don't have a vote, which sort of minimizes, your sway on that committee. And it's also sort of interesting that, John McGrath doesn't have a vote on that committee, but he seems like the most influential person in the room.
Well, most of the members of the committee aren't residents of either town. If you go down that, the list you just had, I looked at it earlier.
Principals, town administrator, select board members.
Yeah, basically board members will be residents, but beyond that.
All right. It doesn't sound like anybody is jumping for this opportunity. I'll talk to Jeff offline and see if that's something else I'm gonna assign out to our lone non-member, non-present member here, or if it's something I at least attend a meeting or two and see what I'm walking into.
If you want, I'll at least temporarily go there and see what they're doing.
Well, you could do that.
Whatever you'd like.
Sure, Bob. Appreciate that.
Yeah. Get a motion to make Bob the school building committee representative for the Wenham Finance Committee.
Okay, looking for a motion on that.
So moved.
All right, that was Jared. So looking for a second. I'll make the second, and then we'll look for a vote. So I'll vote aye.
Jared, aye.
I guess
Dano,
I'm
aye.
staying, right?
No,
Well,
you
I'm
can
sure
you can vote.
Okay.
All right, great.
Okay.
Thanks, Bob. Looking forward to hearing what you learned there.
Okay.
All right, and in all the excitement, I've forgotten what the third thing was that I wanted to ask folks about. Oh, I know what it was. Does anybody have any information on 3A? So John McGrath was telling me that he expected to he expected a role for the Hamilton Finance Committee in a town meeting dedicated to this topic in June. I have not had any official requests from the select board or the town managers on this topic, and there seems to be a lot of occasionally you'll get something in the news that says that it's going to be it's an unfunded mandate and it's going to be delayed, or that's a non a non-issue, and it's going to we still have to expect a town meeting in the, I think, late May, early June timeframe to ensure compliance. Has anybody heard anything on this topic that might, inform this committee about what we might have to expect to do?
So they're starting a working group at town hall. The town administrator select board are working to start this working group that I think would include a select board member, probably a FinCom member, planning board members, and also I think some members of the public as well, maybe to bring in some of the folks who are opposed. And the focus of this working group, I believe, is going to be there's been a request for some reporting. What could we expect the cost of 3A to be, and sort of maybe taking an approach similar to the deck you built for Cutler. It's to sort of figure out where all of our facts are coming for, how many people per bedroom, those type of things, get those from some sort of source, and then build out a matrix of, I for some reason I have it in my head, like 19 units will go in over by Enon Village or something is one of the areas. What should the town expect as, number of new residents, number of new students, what would the tax base increase look like versus compared to the upfront costs and things like that. And so that has started, but they haven't yet put out the word for asking for a finance committee representative, but I would assume that is going to be forthcoming, probably in fairly short order.
Okay. All right, so we'll look for news in our emails on that topic, and we'll be looking for a volunteer to be the lightning rod on that. Okay, I think those are all the topics I could think of. Anybody else have other topics for discussion here at the end of the meeting? All right, I'm not hearing any, so
When are we next meeting?
Can I actually have you guys look at one thing quick
sure.
here on the screen? So you should be seeing a 10-year tax projection. We talked about this a week or two ago, I think. And I reworked this a little because we were having, we weren't liking that it was showing the tax rate every year. And then we were just showing the average and the median household impact. And then we're also showing the per $100,000 impact, which, indirectly was showing the tax rate. So I reworked this schedule so that instead of actually showing like the average, the median, the per 100,000, I just added this stuff down here that showed you the annual and the cumulative tax increase at the town level over the next 10 years. And I didn't know if this might be something that you guys might like a little better, less confusing. I mean, I know it doesn't necessarily speak to individual, tax bills, but it does, someone can look at this and sort of see, the cumulative increase. You can see in 2028 where Cutler hits, you see the big 15% jump there, and things like that. But I didn't know if this might be something, as I'm trying to build out our new budget software. And I know, especially as I was reading through the minutes, I know getting this kind of information about the 10-year impact of not just Cutler, but how that layers in on top of the Prop 2.5 growth, if you will, what that looks like. So just wanted to get some thoughts on if you might like this presentation better, or if you prefer to stick with the other sort of approach.
Jeff, what might be useful to show as a stalking horse is adding a line under the cumulative increase to show the cumulative increase of inflation based on whatever assumption you've got in here. If it's 3% or whatever. Because I think what that will show is how the cumulative, what you've got here compares to what would, just occur because of inflation.
Like actual CPI inflation, or just the normal inflation of the budget?
Well, he's basically saying if you assume that the inflation that you're going to have in the next, each one of these years is say 4% inflation, right? Is what CPI is likely to do, then this would suggest, absent that 2028 big jump, that the cost of the town is going to grow below the cost of inflation, right? I just picked 4% from the top of my head.
In that case, yeah.
But you need to use whatever Jeff assumed when he ran the numbers out.
Well, and that's up here is
Yeah. No, that's the, but you were assuming some interest, some rate of inflation driving those, right? Like maybe.
Right. So I'm assuming that the town budget will grow 3%. The school district and the two school districts will go 3.5% every year. Our revenue streams will grow, and new growth will stay flat.
So I think I like this presentation because it does not pretend to know the value of the tax assessed value. So I like this one better. And I'm trying to think about how I might think about say a 3% increase there in column D, right? The only way that residents wouldn't see a corresponding 3% increase in their own property tax bill is if there was, 3% increase in households, new houses and new builds in the town, right? Is that the right way? So basically,
Yeah, I mean, we have to assume that most of these growth rates will, we have to pick something. But yeah, so basically, like this year here, you would go, if everything just stayed exactly the same, you'd go up 3.09%. But the reality is, your assessment will change, or your neighbor's assessment will change, and I'll go up 2.91 and Finn will go up 3.7 or something. But yeah, if I changed this.
right. So you would need,
Oh, but that's only actually changing my, that's new growth is really more of a function. It's more of a tax rate function.
so you need
when
$700,000 more taxes paid by some new residents, new houses, and $700,000 divided by a $2 tax rate, right? Is that $140 million of new houses?
yeah, so I need 700,000.
If I'm not mistaken, over the last decade or so, I looked up the numbers. I can't remember them exactly, but I don't think Wenham has been growing population-wise. It's actually been shrinking a little bit. So I think, we need to be careful about the assumption about, unless, we're pushing 3A and 100 people per bedroom, in which case the septic system will fail.
All right. So
Yeah,
so you're not going to grow the residents to keep this annual increase flat, right? you're going to have to cost reductions or, a New England Biolabs size building over in the Gordon property in order to materially affect that annual increase. Okay. Looks great, Jeff. Thank you.
All right, so and I'll think about the inflation thing and maybe work with Bob on that a little bit. But yeah, I think, and I think that gets the point across. Dano, I think specifically, like, it would be the person who, I just want to make sure I'm capturing his, what he'd like to see as well. Because I know he's mentioned this a couple of times, so I just wanted to make sure, we were following through on things we had discussed as being important to showing the residents.
Jeff,
Yeah,
if,
thanks a lot,
you
Jeff.
had,
Really appreciate it.
if you had 3% growth, you'd be looking at 34 point something versus the 42%. That might be interesting, to show people that, it's costing a little bit more. But I think most people don't really appreciate the effect of compounding, So, that's why I was suggesting that you show some kind of inflation-based number as a comparison. Another row.
Okay.
I was just going to suggest a simple chart graph of some sort off the top of my head that shows, I don't know,
Just a chart.
today,
Like-
5 years from now, 10 years from now, bar chart. Here's your tax.
Yeah, like a bar chart with like a
tax.
trend line.
Well, not even that. Yeah, you could put the trend line or not. I just mean a side-by-side bar with median single family home and average single family home. So in 2022, median is 16, or 2025, whatever year we're in, median is 14 and average is 16. And then in 2030, median would be 17 and average would be 20. And in 2035, median would be 19 and average would be 22, whatever the number is in terms of total tax owed for the median home and total tax owed for the average home at 3 different places over the next decade: year 1, year 5, year 10. 3 different side-by-side bar charts in one bar chart with 3 different side-by-side numbers. Does that make sense?
Yep. Okay.
Off the top of my head, maybe that's not the best chart, but just people aren't going to get all this stuff, and anybody who wants to dig into the details can figure out the methodology behind it. But
Okay.
just be good for people to walk away with what's the real impact, given all our assumptions. And I think we've done a great job. Like, you've done a great job, Jeff, and I don't know how materially our changes at this point will change the numbers.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I can work on a bar chart, and yeah, because the new software tends to have a you can sort of toggle between table versus chart for people who view taken information differently. So I'll work on that, and I can send a snapshot out to the group to take a look and make sure we're capturing it the way you want to see it. But yeah, we can look at that, and I'll work with the inflation number thing, Bob, and run that by you as well. But I see your point of saying, whatever, 42%, but how much of that is, just typical inflation based? I mean, the trouble becomes you're kind of projecting what you think inflation is too. So, yeah, we'll work on those 2 things and circle back, get some stuff out to you over the next week.
Do you know, Jeff? Yeah, that sounds great. Do you know, Jeff, when the 2.5 Proposition 2.5 went into effect? When did that get voted in?
It's 79-ish.
79. Okay, so that was
79,
right at the
80.
end of the huge inflation time period in the United States.
Yeah, I think that was sort of the driver. It was, that town budgets were, go escalating quickly because inflation was escalating quickly, and someone finally said, we need a mechanism that caps this. So it was, right around 79 to 80 timeframe, I think.
Can I ask you a question, since we got a bunch of brainiacs on the phone here? If I'm thinking about this right, you just mentioned the impact of compounding interest, Bob. the big coup with being able to buy a house is that it's effectively a leverage buyout model. You get to borrow all the money and you have to put minimal down. And so you get huge wealth building opportunity, assuming it goes up at some minimal rate. So doesn't that same implication apply to our taxes? Because the tax is on the full value of the house, as opposed to just the equity you put in the house. So some minimal inflation rate on your taxes is it's like an outsized impact on your budget because it's against the full value of the house as opposed to just the equity you put in the house. I'm not saying that right, but you kind of get my point. It's not like inflation of my food costs, because I was paying for all those out of pocket anyway, real cash, and that goes
Mhm.
up by 4%. So now I'm paying, instead of 100, I'm paying 104. But for my house, I only had to put 10,000 down on a $100,000 house. But a 4% increase goes from 100 to 104,000 for my house, or it goes from taxes of 1,000 to 1,400, or 1,400. It's like a leveraged impact. Inflation on your taxes is a leveraged impact, just like the appreciation of a house is a leveraged impact for the good. Anyway, side note, not relevant, but it's just something that's been in the back of my mind.
Sure, I understand.
Yeah, and I'd say it's further compounded too, because you used to be able to deduct the the real estate tax you paid, so it was that was helpful. But now, in large part, you can't. That makes it compounds the problem you're talking about on the real estate tax side of things.
Yeah, that too.
Well, the other thing you should keep in mind, though, is the income with what you're paying this from should be going up with inflation. The unfortunate thing is, unfortunately, that folks in the middle 60% have not been keeping up with inflation. The people in the bottom 20% have really been getting clobbered, and the people in the top 20% are making out like hell. But I mean, I think that's the comparison about what you got for income, as opposed to the leverage on the, whatever equity you put down and principal you've repaid against the value of the house.
Yeah, no, totally. That's a great point. Another factor too.
All right, cheers, Jeff. Thanks for putting this up, and interesting discussion about with the leverage buyout, leveraged equities here. So I'm looking at the end of the agenda here, and I don't see any. I think we've lost our only member of the public. So I don't think it was the last discussion, Dano. She was scared away earlier by
I was going to
whatever.
say we've worn people out.
Attrition, boys.
Yeah. So unless anybody else has any other topics to cover, I would entertain a motion to close the
Just
FinCom
next
here.
meeting. What?
Oh, yeah.
When's the next meeting?
So the absolute must next meeting is the 31st, the joint meeting leading up to the town meeting. Honestly, there's I don't know that there's a lot for us to do in the next couple of weeks. Certainly, I would think we could take next week off. I don't know that it's even necessary to meet the following week to get prepared for the meeting with the select board, in terms of, we'll have picked who's going to read what articles and those type of things. We certainly can have a meeting, but I don't know if there's any particular business between now and town meeting that is going to require us to meet.
Jeff, isn't there one item on the warrant that says we're going to make a recommendation at the town meeting? And I forget which item it is, but I don't think we can
It's
talk about it.
the CPA, there's the Community Preservation Committee articles, Bob, you're correct. And we could, on the 31st, we could make a motion on, or make a recommendation on those. As far as I know, they haven't finalized, that committee hasn't finalized a few things for us to really weigh in on yet. But we could, and the select board also has to recommend those same articles. So in the joint meeting, we could both address that.
Okay. Sounds good to me.
Okay, so we'll shoot for the 31st. Yeah, I mean, the only other thing that's out there is the $500,000 grant. I believe they talked to the Green Communities folks this week, and all signs are still looking positive. So that's good news. So maybe the problem we'll have is just having to sort of vote again on what to put into stabilization, because we've got another $500,000 in play. But I think we're waiting to the last minute to ensure that there's no hiccups with that grant.
Okay. Not hearing any other discussion. Does anybody want to make the motion to close the meeting at 8:18 p.m.?
So moved.
Second.
All right, second. All right, any discussion? Not hearing any. We'll move to a vote. Finn votes aye.
Bob
Jared,
votes
aye.
aye.
NOI.
And I think you got 4 votes for, so I think we're good to go. So we'll call the meeting closed, guys. Thanks very much for your
Thank
time.
you.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
Talk to you
Thanks,
again
everybody.
soon. Okay,
Bye
bye.
now.